Now we're on to our featured topic, the reason y'all are here today, shared commercial kitchen spaces. So this workshop helps move the needle on the convergence priority or convergence event priorities about identifying root causes of food insecurity and creating community-driven solutions, as well as strengthening the local food supply coordination. So I'm going to turn it over to Harriet and Christine.
All right. Thanks, Annie. Welcome, everyone. We're so glad you're here today. Um, we brought together this workshop because it has felt over the past several years like we've been hearing more and more processing as a barrier to food businesses growing in Maine and to food security work, both of which are areas that we as a food council have been working on. Um, and it seemed like, once again, it's time to come together and see what we can learn from each other so that we're not recreating any wheels here, whether it's simple things like, do you have a template for a renter contract for a kitchen? Or, how did you get your kitchen funded? Whatever the question is, we have a resource within each other. Um, and so we wanted to start to build a network of folks that are doing this work across the state and share each other's perspectives and what's worked and what hasn't, and how we can use these shared kitchen spaces to address some of the processing shortfall that we know exists within the state of Maine. Um, so I can say for our food council, how we came to this work was actually from the food security perspective. So we ran a gleaning program for many years and um, found that there was more food that we could glean if we had access to processing capacity, and so we started working with local processors, and knew that we could continue to do more food security work if we could do more processing work. And then a local processor moved out of the region who several farms had worked with, and we had an opportunity to work with Midcoast Hunger Prevention Program to support the expansion of a kitchen at their facility out at the Brunswick Landing. And we are very lucky to be partnered with them on this work and seeing what it can do both for the local food system and for food security work to create a shared kitchen space. So excited to share out that work and to hear from all of you today, whether you're here as a renter or as a operator of a kitchen space or someone who's just interested in hearing what can happen. It's also a really exciting time, and we'll talk more about this later, but as the Convergence Project Switchboard project gets going, that's going to be another way that we can work to tie together a lot of these different processing efforts across the state and different parts of our food system. So I'm going to turn it over to Christine. Christine is a journalist, a local food advocate, a steering committee member for the Food Council, and part of our work with Midcoast Hunger Prevention Program on this shared kitchen in Brunswick. And she's going to be the facilitator today.
Okay. It's so great to see so many faces on this call. We kind of wanted to start off the conversation with a very basic definition of what we see as what exactly a shared kitchen is. And we really define that as any space with food prep equipment that is licensed by the State Department of Agriculture or the Health and Human Services Department, and it has equipment that can be shared with outside organizations. It's a very wide open definition by design because we see many kitchens that are unused in the state or are not used to full capacity. And we want to include all of those in the conversation. And so we have folks who are still on our panel, still in the developmental stage, coming at it from very different angles. And we have folks that are more established, like Fork Food Lab and Midcoast Hunger Prevention Programs Community Kitchen. But we want to make sure that this conversation is open to all kitchens, large and small, and all potential renters, large and small, no matter what food business you are looking to get into, expand, grow, incubate, however you want to pursue that. So we wanted to start off introducing our panelists with just a few ice-breaking questions. And I'm going to hit up Randy Forrester first. He is the Mid-Coast Hunger Prevention Programs Community Kitchen Director. Correct me if I'm wrong, or coordinator. Okay, coordinator. And he has a long history as a very celebrated chef, and he puts the volunteers who in the kitchen to very good use there, as I know. So, Randy, the first question to you is, what is your favorite piece of kitchen equipment in that shared space?
Good question. Hi, everybody. So we're fortunate to have a pretty well thought out space. I think probably our most used and our favorite are our high powered convection ovens, which help us get a lot of food out very, very quickly and very efficiently. I think for us, it's a very versatile piece of equipment that is used by sometimes at the same time renters, co-packing, and our volunteers. So it's certainly well used.
Okay. And just to illustrate some resiliency here, can you describe your narrowly avoided kitchen disaster?
So a lot of narrowly avoided and a lot of actually, seen kitchen disasters. But I think one of my first, the one that comes to mind is a piece of frozen ham flying off of a meat slicer and someone's hand almost coming right down to the blade. And I don't know how it missed it, but it missed it. And that would have been pretty tragic. So
yeah,
that was a pretty good one.
That's a happy ending story. Next, we're going to move to the renter side of the equation, and we have Allie Wax Adams. Full disclosure, she's a very good friend of mine, and she is an amazing caterer with Bella Busta Catering Company based here in Brunswick. She does boutique catering, and she's also on the Maine, the Mid-Coast Hunger Prevention Program board. So Allie, what is the kitchen music you're most often dancing to around as you make your wonderful food?
I think it depends on what I'm making. I usually listen to opera or when I'm baking or making pasta. There's something about the rolling out the pasta. When I'm just doing prep, it is mostly classic rock, 80s, 90s. I like to clean to club music. And right before any gig, I want to hear Ramble On by Led Zeppelin.
Why is that?
That's just my go song. There's something about the way it builds up. It sort of gets you starts slow and then it anticipates. And it's like, now it's time to go.
Okay. Got it. And what is your favorite piece of kitchen equipment in any of the shared spaces that you find yourself working in?
Humbly, I'm going to say the dishwasher because I do not have one in my home. And when I've had to bring things home and wash them in my tiny sink, I thank whatever there is to thank for that dishwasher.
Okay. Next, I want to move on to Catherine Piper, who is owner of Five Pillars Butchery and a startup manager for the Lewiston Auburn Community Market. And I know that you have a very interesting collaborative effort going on to build that community market. So I'm going to sort of tailor my question in terms of what kind of music do you think you'll be that will be flowing through that kitchen once you get it up and running?
Well, first I want to thank you all for having me here. And that's an interesting question because we have such a diverse group of people. on our board. We have people from the Angolan community, we have people from the Somali community, we have white Mainers, and I think there will probably be a mix, and it will probably be based on who is in the kitchen.
Okay.
At the time.
Yeah.
If it was me, I would say political podcasts, but I
Okay. But it seems like with the African communities represented there, we might have some drumming, some a good beat to work to as well if they're in the kitchen there. Um, and so I guess I'm going to alter my question a little bit in terms of if you're working um, with a butchery operation yourself. I mean, do you have a favorite knife that you bring to every kitchen you're working in?
Well, I'm not the processor. My husband is.
Okay.
I can't answer that question. But I will say I'll just share this information when it comes for religious slaughter. A very, very sharp long knife
Hmm.
should be used during the slaughter to
Okay.
ensure as minimal pain as possible.
Okay. Excellent.
Really a cooking knife, though.
Okay. That's true. That's not going to be something you're going to be carrying around in your back pocket. Um, all right, we're going to move on to Patrick Moore, and he is the director of entrepreneurship with the Skowhegan Center for Entrepreneurship. And I know that you're in the process of finding space, correct?
That is correct. So
Okay.
we are working on purchasing a building in downtown Skowhegan right now.
Okay. Okay. So, um, do you have a food background yourself?
No,
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 you don't.
I was
Okay.
spent 10 years in the Air Force, and then
Okay.
but I'm currently enrolled in a master's program in food business through the Culinary Institute
Okay.
of America. So
Oh, so if you're working for the Air Force, I'm going to avoid the question about describing one narrowly avoided disaster for sure. Okay, so what in the planning stages of this kitchen, what kind of music might motivate you to get through all of the hurdles that you're encountering as you go to buy this building?
I listen to a lot of classic rock. That's for
Okay,
sure.
a lot of classic rock getting you over the hump. Okay. And in your research, what do you see as you're going to set up your kitchen? Are most of your interested parties clamoring to have in the space?
I mean, just the fact that we're having a shared kitchen,
Okay, just
people are really excited about. Um, Not just producers, but and startups, but actually folks in Skowhegan that already have their own spaces are just
Mhm.
excited to see more additional cold and freezer storage coming to the area.
Yeah. Okay.
They really want to rent just that space. So
Yep. They want storage space.
yes.
Okay, I think yes. Okay, great. And now we are going to move on to Bill Soretta. He's the executive director of the Fork Food Lab in Portland. And since you've got probably the longest running operation in the area on the shared kitchen space, I think I'd be curious to know what your favorite, the most clamored for piece of equipment in the Fork Food Lab.
Well, let me back up a second and say, yeah,
Okay.
we're just starting our 10th year
Hmm.
at Fork Food Lab. I've been involved in the leadership of the lab for just almost finishing 7 years of that. Or
Okay.
excuse me, yeah, 7 years of the nine. Um, uh, and we moved to a new facility 2 years ago. We moved from our 5,200 square foot facility to a 30,000 square foot facility. So we are large. And I think we have things that we can share from a learning standpoint, but scale is weird when it comes to the shared facility, which we can talk about later. From an equipment standpoint, I think you wanted what we like most, like
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
we have. I mean, we have lots of stuff, but the two things we added that I have equal passion for, we have rotating ovens in our bakery now along, and um, I can't tell you how much of a difference that makes to a lot of our production folks. Um, Convection ovens are great, except you have to physically rotate your product a lot to keep it from burning on one side. And a lot of our members who had particular attention to that had to go in constantly and do that. Now they just stick it in a 16 rack oven and push a button and let it go.
Oh,
We
so the
have two of
racks
those.
turn
The
inside the
racks
oven?
turn
Oh,
all the time. We
nice.
have two of those, and we're probably going to, at some point in the next year, get a third because they are in such demand. We have a rather large bakery contingent, and part of our kitchen is set up so that there's one whole section that's baking only.
Okay.
The second one that sort of ties that is we're all electric kitchen. We have no gas, and so we have induction burners. So the cooktops are all induction, and not only are they much more controllable than gas by a mile, they have no waste heat. So we are able to keep our kitchen temperature any time of year, any time of day at about 70 degrees.
Okay.
Never any hotter, never any colder.
Oh,
At the old
excellent.
facility in the winter, it was 40 degrees in the kitchen. In the summer, it was 100. Yeah, I don't care what we put on for air modification. That was the case. So those two items for us are change the whole atmosphere of a good chunk of the kitchen.
Okay. And so you have how many partners working in the shared kitchen?
How many, we call them members. We
Members.
have 89 companies
Okay.
right now. We have another 20 onboarding over the next 5 weeks,
Okay.
and I think we'll be close to capacity at that point. Because obviously not they're all there at the same time, but any given day during this time of the year, we'll have 15 to 20 companies in the kitchen at the same time.
Oh, I'm glad you bring that up. That was my next question. When you've got 15 to 20 companies in the kitchen at one time, what is the music protocol there?
Earbuds.
Earbuds. Okay.
Um, uh, and occasionally if there are less people in the kitchen, somebody will be blaring away, and I mean, our membership is very, very diverse. You and So the music could be pretty much anything from anywhere.
Okay. Excellent. You never know what's going to happen depending on the
Nope.
combination. Okay, so that was our sort of our rapid fire introduction to our panelists, and we're going to come back and ask them some more in-depth questions later on in the show. But first we're going to do some breakout questions because some breakout sessions because we wanted to give the attendees a chance to work up some of the questions that we will be asking these panelists. There's going to be 4 breakout rooms, and each will have a character sketch, which Harriet is now going to post that doc in the chat. And so whatever, if you're working in, if you're in breakout group 1, then you'll do the first character, breakout 2, you'll do the second character. And each sketch outlines who the character is, what they need from the kitchen. And we would really like you to come up with questions from that point of view and put them and plug those questions into the doc. We're only asking for 3 questions. We would like you to prioritize what question you think is the most important to be asked so that we hit on that with our panelists. And then we'll come back in and integrate those questions into our Q&A with the panelists. So I am going to now turn it over to someone who knows how to work Zoom better than I do to handle the breakout sessions.
Thanks, Christine. Annie's going to share out quickly the poll results from who's in the room.
Okay.
We're going to breakouts. So we've got a good mix of people operating kitchens and renters and other perspectives that we look forward to hearing. Who's here?
So take that in while I set up these breakout rooms. I could not do it while y'all were talking. So give me 1 second.
Okay. I also put a quick intro slide just with all of the panels, each one slide for each panel in the chat. So if you want to go back later and you're like, who was that talked? You have a reference point. If anyone has any trouble opening any of these links, let me know. And if you didn't enter your favorite kitchen music, whether you're cooking at home or cooking in a shared kitchen, if you didn't put that in the chat, pop it in there. And Christine said maybe her son would be able to put a playlist together for us.
He doesn't know it yet, but I'm sure he can.
Harriet and Christine, are you going to breakout rooms?
Why don't we stay here and then we can pop in?
Okay. Then just stay here. Don't press OK when I
Okay.
open it. All right. Ready? Here we go. If you do not see the join, just let me know or let Lauren know.
Of how we got how the kitchens got to be the state that they're in at this point in time, and what the future might hold for them. So we're going to have each of the kitchen suppliers give a short 2-minute description of their kitchen project. And then we will follow up with our one and only renter, Allie, who has experience renting in a couple of different kitchens, to give sort of the renter's point of view. And then we'll go into the targeted questions from the sessions, and some other ones that we wanted to make sure that we hit on from a broader appeal sort of situation. So we're going to start with Randy Forrester. If you could give us a 2-minute recap on the Mid-Coast Hunger Prevention Community Kitchen.
Okay, so the community kitchen is actually MCHPP's newest program, right? About 3 years old. The agency itself has been in operation since the 80s, but when we moved to this new facility on Brunswick Landing, right, we found ourselves, with a lot of food and luckily, a kitchen space where we had gotten some donated equipment. And we decided that this was going to be, a worthwhile venture for us to be able to do 3 main things. So the biggest thing that we do that takes up most of our time is processing excess produce from our food bank, right, to supply our other programs. So we have programs that do satellite deliveries, grocery pickups, food bank, food pantry, soup kitchen, right? So we're very involved in that with our volunteer processing. We also, as we talked about before, we're an incubator kitchen, so we have about 12 businesses who rent space with us, from every different kind of walk of life in food service. And then our third phase is co-packing. So we're a small co-packer for local farms, right? So basically, we take all of our work is essentially, to try and close up some gaps that we see, in the Mid-Coast food system. So that's pretty much it.
Okay, we've got a couple of questions that will probably be good for you. One is about sort of just the logistical details of being able to serve renters who, farmers, whether those are farmers and they can't drop the stuff off until after working hours, or whether it's a renter who has a day job and is trying to start a food business. Like, talk us through some of the logistical issues of making the kitchen accessible 24/7.
So actually, it's kind of funny that we're talking today. So we're just finishing up, our security system here that's going to allow the community kitchen to extend access to renters 24/7, right? Right as of right now, right, we operate. Renters are only allowed to access the kitchen during hours of agency operations. So that's Monday through Saturday, 8 through 4, which is not terribly ideal for food service, right? So we've been working on this project for a very long time, and it's finally coming to the point where it's going to be put into action this coming June. So we're excited to kind of see where the next couple of months take us. But I think we're excited to see how renters are able to react, because they've done a really nice job in terms of being flexible, right? There's buy-in not just from us, but also from our renters when when we're asking them to use the kitchen on a shorter timeline. So with this new move, and to extend access to renters, I think it's going to liven up our operation for sure.
And I think we should probably mention the grant at this point.
Yeah, we should
That,
mention.
that without that grant, I mean, we did it specifically for access, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we were fortunate, but also, we had a lot of members of our team work very, very hard to secure a USDA grant that went into action early fall of 2024. And that allowed us to follow through on a lot of these goals that we have, right? Security, the security system that leads to extended access is just one of where we actually offer our renters free business advising as well, as part of the grant. So we're trying to set all of our renters up for the most success possible.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you. Now I'm going to move on to Catherine Piper, who has, I don't know, your model is a widespread cooperative. So I'm hoping that 2 minutes is going to be enough for you to tell us about all the aspects of getting that project off the ground.
Yeah, I'll try to make it short and sweet.
Okay.
The Lewiston Auburn Community Market is a multi-stakeholder cooperative. And we are going through an option with the city, an option to buy a piece of property with the city in downtown Lewiston. And the plans are a retail, about a 5,000 square foot retail space, a shared kitchen. I think that's around like 4,000. I would have to go back to the layout to give specifics. So shared use kitchen, as well as a dedicated kitchen for staff members. There will be shared storage, shared food storage, and then storage for the retail. So it'll be separated. And then an event space. And that was the last part of the project that was expressed as important to the community. We've been doing a lot of research this past year in events spaces. And so an event space / flex space.
Okay.
So we'll see where that leads us.
Okay. Maybe you might have some interesting, an interesting perspective that came out of a question that came out of group 4, in which, how do you plan to engage the stakeholders sort of in the success of the kitchen? I mean, is there a fee to use the kitchen? Are you allowing renters to sort of pay for the space in kind and product that then goes into the retail space? What are the plans for the users of the kitchen to be invested in the whole bigger umbrella project?
Yeah, so we're still working through some of the membership benefits right now. But the members will be prioritized. So the producer members, whether they're, a farmer or they're a food manufacturer producing food in the kitchen, their products are going to be prioritized in the retail space. And so, if somebody bakes bread or, is great at making cupcakes, their products will be, shown in the retail, and they'll, obviously have other opportunities to sell outside of the co-op. We're not going to say your product can only be sold here. We want people to develop their own businesses, have food trucks around the city, do catering, cater the events that we're, going to be having in our event space. So I think, just having a place for people to sell their products is a really great incentive. They will be paying for the rental space because ultimately any profits that the co-op makes is going to return back to local foods to make local foods more affordable.
Yeah.
So that's the model. We're not looking to, beyond operations and whenever we need upgrades and stuff. We're not looking to profit off of this business. We're looking to make it sustainable and affordable for everybody.
Okay. Excellent. Now we're going to move on to Patrick. Again, he's the director of entrepreneurship with the Skowhegan Center for Entrepreneurship. So if you want to give us your 2-minute story, I've got a question to throw at you after that.
Sure. Well, and I just want to say that the Skowhegan Center for Entrepreneurship is a program of Main Street Skowhegan, and so Main Street's focus is on the revitalization of our of the town of Skowhegan, and so a couple things all came together here. So in 2016, the town created a strategic plan, and one of the pillars of the revitalization was food and ag, focusing on that. And we have a really strong food system in Skowhegan. I'm sure everyone is very aware of Maine Grains, the Maine Grain Alliance, strong bread and grain culture in town, and we have other great businesses, Crooked Face Creamery, the Maine Meal, the list goes on and on. And so, and then I came on board with Main Street in 2021 as the director of entrepreneurship, focusing on building our entrepreneurial ecosystem. And so through that, I work with a full range of businesses, not just food, and I run a small 8-week program helping startups and small businesses get off the ground. And so through my work, I always hear whispers of food businesses popping up and folks looking to start. And that made me start to ask the question, is there a need for this? And so as I began doing some more research, there clearly is a need for additional infrastructure in the state to support these entrepreneurs. So we got in contact with a property owner in the downtown. It's a 6,000 square foot single story building. It's been vacant for years now, and we thought this would be a great opportunity. So we had a feasibility study conducted, which kind of gave us a little more firepower behind us to show that yes, this is possible here in Skowhegan. Looking at about a range of an hour away, and of course talking with others, especially Bill. Fork Food Lab was a great help in the beginning, trying to understand the need, and so I've just been educating myself around this. And so again, it's a 6,000 square foot kitchen. We have a flexible event space. We'll have about a 1,200 square foot kitchen. Of course, all the storage capacity. And then we're planning a separate room dedicated to co-packing as well. And the last thing I want to mention is the programming is especially important to me. And so this year, even before we have the kitchen, because we're just fundraising at the moment, but I am launching in August a new program focused specifically on food entrepreneurs. And we're trying to take a more focused approach on working with them. Actually, was inspired by La Casina out in San Francisco. They have a program that goes about 4 to 6 years of working with their food entrepreneurs. So this August, I'm launching the first stage. We just call it the pre-incubation stage for early CPG producers. And so that's just a very hands-on understanding the business components because they're all very good at making their products, but not everyone is good at understanding the business side of things. So,
okay. So I'm going to ask you a question that came out of the breakout room that we were both in. How do you identify potential renters for the kitchen?
yeah, so the feasibility study helped tremendously. We worked with Caroline Paris on that, and she was fantastic and really gave us some great data. And we also hosted, with her help, some focus groups that brought in folks from all backgrounds, producers, some gleaners. We had, I believe, a representative from the hospital, the local hospital there. But it's also, I mean, Main Street Skowhegan is very embedded in the community. We're celebrating our 20th year this year. And so we know, I'd say, nearly everyone in town, and we have a lot of great connections with folks. So it's just, being boots on the ground every day and talking to local business owners. And oftentimes it's the local business owners like Amber Lamke at Maine Grains. I mean, her network of food businesses and folks just starting their business is tremendous. And folks like Amber are always sending those people to us.
Okay,
yeah.
great. All right, thank you, Patrick. And now we'll move on to Bill. And I don't envy your task here in describing 10 years of success in the Fork Food Lab in 2 minutes, but go.
I'm not sure I would call it 10 years of success yet. Uh, I've been at it for 7. I think from my perspective, and I've done a lot of different things in my professional life, but I grew up in the food business as a kid. So I started working in food when I was 10 years old in my family business. So I have learned very quickly that the food business is the most difficult business to be in, no matter where you enter it. Um, and it's only rivaled by the pharmaceutical business in terms of its complexity, regulatory issues, specialized equipment, and cost. Um, I think we find that folks who come into this and don't know much about food but have other skills are rather surprised at how challenging it is just to even do something and sell something to the public. And there are reasons for all of those in terms of health and food safety. Equipment is extremely challenging and difficult because in this country, we do not make equipment for the scale we are all producing at. We make big stuff for industrial food systems. We don't make small scalable stuff for smaller regional and local food systems. And so the equipment we look for typically, if it exists in US made, it's old. And if you want stuff that's really good and workable, you're looking to Europe, Southeast Asia, China, South America, make the equipment that's much more scalable at the scale we're all working at in Maine. So when we started building out Fork, I mean, I've had the luxury and the good fortune to work in our facility for 3 or 4, well, 5 years, and then at the same time start designing and building a new one to take its place. When we took over Fork, it was clear to us who got involved at that point almost 7 years ago when Fork was going to close, that if we took it over and it was somewhat successful, we were going to need to move, but there was no question about it. The facility we were in, I to this day do not understand how it was ever certified by the public health, by Department of Ag. Somebody was wearing a blindfold when they walked through the building. That's all I can say. Um, it was not a place that I called a great place to work out of. 2 floors, no lift, all the cooking on the second floor, all the storage on the first floor. Um, and the stairways were made for accidents. Luckily, I think we only had a couple, and they weren't serious, but they were always close calls. Um, and the walls were brick on the second floor where the cooking was, and they bled brick dust.
Oh.
Um,
So tell us a little bit about the new facility.
So what we did when we finally found the space. It took us a while to find a space of what we wanted on one floor and big enough to do what we wanted to do. Um, I mean, myself and the staff did a lot of observation and talking. We just walked around and talked to folks all the time, and would ask them, so if we could wave a magic wand, what would you want for a piece of equipment?
Mhm.
What don't you like about this space? We knew what we didn't like about it because it became painfully obvious very quickly what didn't work. And so I basically collected all of those ideas and began to map out, uh, how do we accommodate the needs that are out there? And so when we started designing our new space, once we had the building figured out, we did some initial concept work around workflow, and how it might work in a shared facility. But we got the actual building, we had to then take that overlay and put it into the space. And we had to work with the bones of a building that we had. So I worked with the architect and our contractor and our subcontractors. We met every Tuesday for 2 hours for 2 years
Oh
while
my.
we built out the space.
Wow.
And we designed and redesigned and modified. We basically we did what we call design build. We did not, and I'll make this very clear. We did not design the space, then build it. We designed the space, redesigned the space, started building it, and designed as we went along, as we discovered things about the building we were in. As we tore it apart, you find things you didn't know about until you tear it apart. And you started looking at workflow, and you modified spaces, and you learned from feedback from members what was needed and changed. We didn't want to build it, then have to tear it apart as soon as we built it to modify it.
Mhm.
So we had the luxury of build as we went, as design as we went along. And if you can do that, I highly suggest that as a way of progressing, because you want to get as close to right is the wrong word, but you want to get as close as you can come to being respectful and functional for the members you're going to have,
Mhm.
because you really only have one shot at doing that. After that, you're
Yeah.
you're tinkering and you can't make big changes. So that's what we did, and that's how we got. And so all the changes we made were direct reflections of what was going on in the old space, and what we see did not work.
Okay.
We had a loading dock, but a loading dock to nowhere. You couldn't. You could back up. The biggest truck you could get to it was had to be a 14-foot box truck, and you better be a good driver just to get that in there.
Yes,
There's
I've been to the old facility really
yeah,
many times.
yeah.
I want to switch to your just a more pointed question on
Yeah, sure.
your membership, and I think you said the new space allows 15 15 members to be working at the same time.
Actually, it allows right now about 32. We typically have
32.
from 15 to 20 at any
Okay.
given time.
Hmm.
And then as we expand in, we're still in construction on, we've only completed 17,500 feet of our space. We are trying to complete the last 12,500. I know for all of you, that sounds like, 4 or 5 of your spaces.
Hmm.
And it is pretty overwhelming from where we're coming from, because we came from 5,200. But we have a lot of different things going on, because we have CPGers, we have food trucks, we have caterers, we have prepared meals to go, we have nonprofits that are doing things for, Meals on Wheels works out of our space, as does a halfway house that teaches their residents how to cook for themselves.
Okay.
All the way to folks making consumer packaged goods that are being sold regionally, all out of the same location.
Okay.
And so, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry. And so with those we've talked a lot about how to find the right clientele to bring into your kitchen, but maybe if you could speak to the other side, was like, how do you know when one of your members gets too big and sort of needs to successfully graduate from your space? Like, how do you take up that conversation?
Um, well, I'm old enough to have grown kids, and we're teenagers at one point, and left home, or we're
Mhm.
you know moved out of the nest.
Mhm.
Same thing.
Right.
The folks that have been with us for a while, everyone grows at a different speed. Everyone has their own beat they're going to, and we don't interfere with that. We help, we support, we have programming. We're doing a lot of different things, but The one thing that we learned very early on, you can't make anybody do something. It's their business. They have to make decisions for themselves. We can support them in that. We can provide options, but it's really up to them to learn and to make their own decision. So we have people who've come in with, we thought, great ideas, great energy, and were extremely successful in coming up with a product, and then figuring out not too long into it that they hated what they were doing. It wasn't what they thought it was going to be, and they packed up and left. And we
Okay.
supported them in that process. At the same time, we've had folks come in with an idea and, not knowing much about the business and having it take off out from under them, and we had to help them just keep up with their growth. And they have become moved on, become very successful. We don't, at least in the old space, when they became too big, it was very obvious because we didn't have much space or the
Okay.
equipment. And so we would essentially encourage them to leave. We had one member who was in our old space coming to the new space, and we basically told, it's time to move on. You have a staff of 8 people now, and even in our big space, we don't want to accommodate that because
Okay.
you're really ready to be on your own. They loved being in the space and
Okay.
being in a shared space, but we got them set up, and they've been doing great ever since.
Okay. Success story.
We have a number, yeah.
Yeah. So I'd like to move on to Allie. And I think you've got to unmute yourself. And I know you've worked in a number of shared kitchens from Maine to Philadelphia. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you've come to settle on the business you have, and how the shared kitchens that you have worked in have helped you along the way.
Well, so to start off, that I've been in shared kitchen spaces is really to say that I operated mostly as a gypsy for a really long time. And I borrowed other people's kitchens and gave them some money on the side, and sort of didn't 100% buy into what I was doing. Which is the same sort of, I did pop-ups with Christine, where we borrowed a restaurant kitchen, and that was sort of the way that was working for a while. The opportunity when the community kitchen at MCHPP opened up, I was still like, oh, no, I don't know if I'm ready to take the real plunge. I think I can still, like, roast some chicken at my house and bring it to somebody else's house, or act as a private chef where I really would cook at their house rather than elsewhere. But then this gave me the impetus to become a legitimate business, because I had that opportunity to be someplace where it's not like I had to start a restaurant again. I started a restaurant once. That's why I don't have any more money. So when I first started working in the MCHPP kitchen, my idea was to do a prepared food delivery business. And then I realized I really hated that very much. Like really a lot. But I loved catering. So what if I did that? What if I catered? And since making the commitment to do that, I've been more successful than I thought I was going to be. Not so successful that I can start my own facility, but successful enough to where when I needed to buy extra shelves to organize my spot in the kitchen, it didn't hurt.
Okay.
And that's given me a sense of like security and comfort that I didn't have when I was literally just running around with things, just not doing it. I wasn't doing things the right way. I was just trying to get by. And it was like the moving from being insecure and to being secure is such a different way of looking at a business and behaving in a business and as a person and all of those things. And so being able to do that was really a gift to me, to myself, for making the commitment to rent the space.
So for the other renters in the room, what are your top 3 things that what are the top 3 ducks that they need to have in a row in order to walk into a successful shared kitchen rental situation?
I think first it's Randy's gonna laugh when I say focus. Um, but it's having a focus of what your business is. Coming in and being like, I'm gonna make this stuff and then I'm gonna maybe sell some sandwiches at the farmers market. Um, you can't you have to have a focus on for your business because when you're in a shared space, you have your hours where you're working, you have your space that you're going to be in, and it's smaller than if you just had your own space. I think keeping up on your licensing and keeping up on your food safety is really important in a
Mhm.
shared space, um and being aware that you are in a, not it's not yours
Mhm.
and you can't treat it like it's yours. And I have that problem with MCHPP because I'm on the board and I'm a
Mhm.
volunteer. And I
Yeah.
feel like there's a lot of, you know, possible privilege I could throw around and I have to try very hard not to do that.
Mhm.
Um, and that I think being in a shared space is part of the affordability is being able to be humbled by the fact that you know, you have you're part of something smaller. I mean something bigger than just your business.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Allie. I want to bounce back to Catherine because I want you to talk a little bit about sort of the cooperative nature of your program and how you are making space for culturally appropriate products as well as procedures and customs. How is that all coming together?
Well, so our board is made up of, like I, said before, a number of Angle and community members, Somali Muslim community members. And so access to cultural foods is the top priority of what this space is going to be about. Um, because we don't have a lot of options
Mm-hmm.
out there, and we want to create options for our communities, and serve the rest of the general population at the same time. So because that's the top priority, we're thinking about the setup within the kitchen very deeply before we even go with a paid architect.
Okay.
We've been using the agricultural marketing services. They have a really great program for free architectural design services.
Mm-hmm.
We worked with them to do, a preliminary schematic of the whole space, but of the kitchen. And we're going to have a dedicated space for halal. Only halal can be processed there.
Mm-hmm.
There will be probably a separate oven for halal food manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely, utensils and knives and cutting boards, and a lot of the equipment can be used because the safe serve or serve safe regulations are also appropriate for halal, so long as like what's being done first at the beginning of the day is halal
Mm-hmm.
with those pieces. But at the same time, if a different member is going to come in and start using some of the same equipment, that equipment is already going to have been washed and sanitized. So
Mm-hmm.
it's, just making sure that those regulations are followed very strictly, making sure that there is a dedicated space for halal, even, a space for vegetarian and vegan food manufacturers. We do want to accommodate as many entrepreneurs as possible. And so that's a lot of what our conversations are about. For the kitchen, for the retail space, for the ready to eat hot foods that are going to be sold there. We haven't quite figured that out because, a lot of our community members eat pork, and our community members also don't eat pork. And so there's been a little friction with that conversation. Also the conversation of like, well, if you use halal meat when you cook, you're reaching everybody in the community. With the conversation of like, well, our cultural meats might be different than what halal meat is, and so there's just a lot of discussion about what the needs are, and how we can compromise and accommodate in enough of a way that people are still comfortable, though.
Okay.
And I want to say a little bit more because it's a co-op, and there's the profit goes back to workers if there is profit at the end. We're even going to be separating the revenue from pork and alcohol so that Muslim members are getting profit from those types of sales. That's the degree that we're being very conscious about how we set things up.
Okay. I know there was a lot of questions around communication. So first I'm going to ask Allie how she hears about available rental space. And then I want to hit both Patrick and Randy about how you have communicated and how you plan to communicate that the space is available. So let's go with Allie first on how do you hear about available kitchen space?
Like, how do I hear about other available kitchen spaces, or how do I hear about space being available? A lot of it is just talking, or being booked. So there was another kitchen that I've occasionally worked out of, and I worked out of there because I was booked as the chef at an event there. And I was like, ooh, do you rent your kitchen? And I think that's I've noticed a couple of those. I did an event up in somewhere that I can't remember, far away from here, and they had a kitchen, so I was like, oh, there's a shared kitchen space here. And it's been more looking around, realizing, because I came from an urban area where we didn't have Grange halls, there were community centers, but I would always work within other people's restaurants. And then when I came up here, I realized that there are like Grange halls and church kitchens and community kitchens like that. And then that was how I heard about that.
Okay.
Obviously, the MCHPP kitchen, I heard about it because I went, hey, we should have a kitchen. Like, look, can I rent the kitchen? But I don't know that there's a board, like an info board that I'm aware of. And there might be one. But
well, I think I'm going to bring in Harriet for that. There are two, right? Go ahead.
Yep, there are a couple of different places. I was going to do this later, but Kitchen Door is one place that some kitchens in Maine, there are only 3 currently listed there. So if any of you are running community kitchens, shared kitchen spaces in Maine, please post yours there. And then I'll talk more at the end about the switchboard project, but that will basically be a way of trying to pull together a master database of shared storage spaces, shared processing facilities, distribution, all the rest producers, so that we can start to collectively do some more matchmaking and help people find each other.
Okay. And Randy, how do you get those hours filled in the kitchen?
It's a great question, and something that we're working on a lot. But so we're lucky too that MCHPP has kind of solid reach and has for a long time. So and we're also small enough that we're able to kind of exist on word of mouth. But when we do need to reach outside of those parameters, right, we we advertise through our social media channel, right? And we also, our online booking system, the food corridor actually has some cross utilization that we can use for getting the word out there. So we actually get a fair amount of inquiries from those spaces.
Okay. And Patrick, do you have an integrated communications plan in the works or?
In the works, yeah. Yeah. And it's going to be more important here soon because even though we don't have the kitchen yet, we are working with a local church that has a commercial kitchen, and we'd like to get started out of there to at least get some experience under our feet. And begin with, I do have just a very short list of folks in our region that would like to use a commercial kitchen that I learned about through our focus groups and our feasibility study. But just like Randy, I mean, Main Street, again, we've been around for a while. We have a network, and so we have our established social media channels and our newsletters, and that's what we're looking at doing.
On the since we don't have a representative on the panel for either a church or a Grange Hall or that type of sort of ad hoc ground up, top down, I can't remember which one that is. Well, it's just more ad hoc kind of kitchen, smaller kitchen. Are you finding there's any special hoops you have to jump through to work in that kind of space that might not be available on a Sunday because of church services or?
Well, we've just been starting the conversation with them, and it's been interesting because it's certainly not something they're used to. They're used to, using that space for their events, for funeral gatherings or during the holidays. It was because I was hoping to start out of there sooner. We're looking at about July now to start out of there. But during the holidays, they're pretty much like it's off limits because they have all of their food drives and things like that. So that's challenging, and it's also just I'm scheduling a meeting with their committee that manages that space, and it's getting them to understand the concept.
Right.
Who's responsible for what? What are they liable and responsible for? And what are we responsible for? Of course, producers won't be able to store anything there, so that's a challenge. So plenty of challenges to come, but I'm really looking forward to using it more as a learning experience to help continue building out our policies and procedures as we move into a larger kitchen.
Yeah, and our outreach on this topic, we were communicating with somebody who's involved with all of the Episcopal churches along the Northeast, and it's the way she explained it. It's kind of a hunt and peck to find the right person in charge, whether it's the pastor or the hospitality director or the janitor. And it's going to be a church by church basis. But if you have any breakthroughs on how to navigate that relationship, I'm sure there'd be other folks on this call who would be interested in figuring out how to do that, since most churches do have a kitchen. Okay, I lost my train of thought here. I have a question for Bill. You've been in Fork Food Lab has been around the longest. So I'm wondering how you communicate open space or open availability of your kitchen, and if the renters have to come in with less when they want first than they would eventually like, or how do you navigate that?
It's as unique as every member we have and every member we could potentially have. There's not an answer. Because we've been around long enough, we get referrals from pretty much every organization in the greater Portland area that touches food in any way, or has members or programs that touch food. We've even gotten referrals from the South Portland Police Department for And this was for somebody who was selling food illegally. Instead of arresting them and throwing them in jail, they said, maybe you should set up at Fork Food Lab,
Oh,
a diversion.
interesting.
Yeah, I mean, uh, and of course, we have our social media. We put out a weekly a letter to the public that goes to about 4,000 people, plus our Instagram and Facebook accounts are all carry information about what we're doing, what's going on, where our members are setting up shop if they're doing markets all over and around Portland. Um, Again, what I think it's a it's hard to talk about what Fork does in the situation because it all comes with longevity to a large extent. That's the reality. Um, Maine is a small state. The longer you've been around, the more people you know, and the more people know you. It's sort of hard to avoid that here. And we make an effort to reach out to as many possible groups as we can, and to partner with them on events and projects, and that extends that capacity as well. We get oh anywhere from 4 to 10 or 12 inquiries a week about Fork. And we have people who move to Maine to set up their food business. We have several members now who moved to Greater Portland to get to be in Fork to set up their food business because it was more suitable for what they wanted to do than where they were living. And right now, the furthest we have away is a couple moved from Hawaii to Portland and have been with us for about a year now.
Okay.
Others come from Boston, from California, from Florida, from New York.
And is
Maine,
that just for this? Excuse, sorry, sorry to interrupt, but is that just
yeah,
for the
yeah.
space, or is it? Do you also have some wrap around?
Oh, yeah, we have all the services you can.
Okay.
We never had a chance to get into that, but yeah, we have all the support services. We have
What
a
are some of
co-op
those
buying.
wraparound services? Go ahead.
Our most popular one coming up now that we're doing is we have a buyer on staff we do co-op buying, so we can buy in bulk from farms and from broadliners.
Mhm.
And what that allows for smaller members who want to set up an account to buy, say from native Maine, if they're too small, they can't set up an account, and they're going to pay top dollar if they're
Okay.
small.
Mhm.
If you do it through our buy program, you're going to get the pallet prices and the bulk buying prices because that's how we're buying it.
Okay.
And it's one delivery. We make note to all the people we work with. When you deliver to Fork to 95 Darling Avenue, you can deliver to 85 businesses in one drop.
Okay.
And to
That's great.
broadliners and distributors, that's a big deal. That's
Mhm.
a big deal. And so that's part of those services we have. We provide all the support around getting licensing through all the various pieces. We help people develop and grow their businesses. Our goal is to get them in front of buyers, whether that be the buying public or for stores or markets or going into distribution as soon as possible, to get feedback on their product. We think that's the most important thing we can do for them is you may have a great idea and your best friend said you ought to bottle it. It's not always the truth. Um,
Right.
it's what the buying public, whoever you're selling to, thinks how good your product is, not your family.
Okay.
So we have to get over that hurdle as well.
Okay. I've got one last, we've got to wrap up this portion of the program, but I have one more question for Randy because I want to I want you to talk a little bit on the co-packing side in terms of is there aggregation potential for small farmers to sort of get together to
Right.
process sort of all of their chili peppers or all of their, at peak times. Have you had any discussions along those lines?
In terms of finding the space for them?
Yes. Do you have a group of farmers coming in or?
Yes. So
Okay.
we again, we're always, just like we're always looking to find new renters that will fit our space. We're always looking for new co-packing partners to fit our space as well. like I said before, we're a very small outfit when it comes to co-packing. But I think in general, really what we're looking to do, as opposed to, and it's the same thing what we're looking to do in terms of being an incubator. NCHPP is about serving the community first before revenues, right? So when we look for co-packing partners, we're looking for a situation where we can help the local farmer, right? Instead of profit off of what they're doing. So we offer approachable rates. We are very flexible in terms of how we can help support them. And that's really what we're looking to do for them. Again, it's not necessarily something where we put revenue first. This is really the only program that MCHPP has that has a branch for revenue. But even with that, we certainly focus on kind of closing those gaps within our food system.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that. And I apologize that we got to just a fraction of the questions. We could probably talk for another 2 hours, but I don't think any of us want to be on Zoom that long. But we would like to take some time to open the discussion for folks who are on the Zoom who might have some other models or connections or resources that we want to talk about that you want to lift up at this point. I do have some names to call on if you don't offer it up. Allison Levitt, are you still on the call? I don't see her. No, she's not still on the call. Okay. Becca Schoen. No, she hopped off too. Okay.
I think she had a scheduling change. Yep.
Okay, awesome. Well, that's awesome. So maybe Juliana Beecher from the Switchboard Project.
I'm here.
Okay, there you are, Juliana. You want to give? I know Harriet was going to give a capsule of the Switchboard program later on, but I think I'm going to preempt that and let you take that and talk a little bit about the different shared kitchen models you might be seeing and the work there.
Sure. So I am happy to introduce the switchboard. And Harriet, if was any piece of it that you wanted to highlight in particular for this group, maybe you can fill in. Um, so, oh, great. Thanks for putting that in the chat. So the local food switchboard is a new initiative of the Maine Food Convergence Project. It got started a little less than a year ago, and it came out of an idea that that was founded in discussions within the local food processing work group, which is a work group that the Maine Food Convergence Project and Maine Farm and School to Institution Network that they co-facilitate. And that processing work group had years of discussions and common themes such as lack of processing infrastructure, lack of cold storage space, lack of some food supply chain coordination. All of those ideas kept coming up. And so the switchboard was sort of born out of that and then received funding through Full Plates, Full Potential from USDA through a school food system innovation grant. So the switchboard was born, and it's been maybe 9 months or so of putting together an advisory team and then hiring on consultants. I am one of those consultants, and we're now in the research and development phase of the project. So we are hosting in-person community engagement events to hear directly from producers and processors, distributors, and like school nutrition directors and other institutional buyers about how the switchboard could support them when it is eventually built. We're also hosting interviews and focus groups, and we have an online survey. And then this summer, we will put together everything that we hear and we will build an online platform. It'll be part map and database. It will also host various resources that we're still figuring out. But the goal is for it to be the centralized hub of information about Maine's local food system and to also be a point of connection. And so we're hoping to be able to make connections and help facilitate connections all across the state to yeah, to just support our local food system, especially getting more local food into schools, but also connecting like producers with shared kitchen spaces, processing infrastructure, and whatever other resources. Um, a couple unique aspects of the project are that we will have a real live switchboard operator who will initially be focused on directly assisting school nutrition provider directors in purchasing local food, and will also be maintaining the data in the map and database. We have heard again and again that other projects like this that have been tried. One of the major sort of sticking points that proves a real challenge in the long-term sustainability is the challenge of keeping data up to date. So we're definitely thinking about how to make that happen. And then we also, through this grant, have money to place some new cold storage units around the state or to provide some financial support to existing cold storage units that aren't being fully utilized because of costs or anything else.
Okay, that's great. The cold storage is a big part of the missing piece here. I just wanted to pop over to Marge Kilkelly. Are you still on the call?
I am. There I am.
Okay, awesome, awesome. In the breakout session that you were in that I popped in, you had an interesting perspective on sort of decreasing some of the barriers that might be that smaller food producers might run into. If you could talk a little bit about how maybe explain your kitchen in like 30 seconds and then talk about how you're accommodating the smaller folks who may not be ready
Sure.
for a fork food lab. Yeah.
Right, exactly. I mean, we have a small farm. Our tagline is small farm, big kitchen. And what we've worked on over the years is having equipment in the kitchen that would satisfy the very smaller scale but commercial producer, like somebody wants to make something for the farmer's market or somebody that just once a year wants to be able to make their 100 jars of strawberry jam or whatever it is and not have to travel a great distance in order to do that. And one of the things that I've advocated from a policy perspective in Farm Bill discussions and others is a set aside of federal money, if we ever get any, that would be for farms that were looking for ways to enhance their revenue, but also provide a locally based, smaller processing facility for folks. So we have over the years, we've had 2 or 3 people in here that have made things for the farmers market or done preserves. We had a person come in who was interested in doing candy, and she did a day trial to see if it was going to work for her. Um, from the time we started this until now, there's this really big gap because I was commuting out of state to work for years. And so we're just sort of back in the flow again. And one of the things that I know in the beginning was a problem was waiting for inspection, because even though we're inspected and licensed, that every person that came in needed to go through the same inspection. And I actually rented a church kitchen years and years ago to do catering. And it was ironic. It was inspected for a Head Start kitchen. It was inspected for the church, and it was inspected for me. And it was sometimes the same person looking at the exact same things. And I don't know if that's been addressed or not, but it's something that that I'm looking at moving forward.
Okay. I think we have to move into sort of what's next part of the discussion, which Harriet's going to bring along. What I plan to do is collate all the questions that haven't get answered and get answers for those, and we'll distribute that to the group at a later date. But I'm going to let Harriet take it over from here. But thank you for your indulgence and time and expertise.
All right. Thanks everyone for hanging on for a long Zoom call. I saw there was one question in the chat about processing spaces for shellfish. And John, maybe I'll connect you and Randy after the call because he can answer some of those questions as well. And we can, I think as the switchboard project gets going, that's certainly something to identify in the list of processing spaces, identifying which processing spaces can accommodate shellfish and other seafood or meat processing would be a good way of helping people find a good match. So as I said at the beginning, we're thinking of today's session as a starting point. We knew that there were a lot of other efforts getting going in the state, and we just wanted to start by bringing people together to build some relationships. And so what we're curious about is what you all collectively want. Where do you want to go from here? There are several different levels of interaction that we can all have. So whether that's, we get together on a Zoom call like this once or twice a year, to, we go on site visits and we have kind of an open call to this group and anyone else who wants to be part of it, of like, hey, I'll go down to Pork Food Lab on this date, or let's go to MCHPP on this date. We're happy to help kind of convene on that level. So I'm going to share out in the chat an exit poll. And the biggest thing from that is wanting to know from all of you, can we share your contact information with one another, and asking you to share that with us so that we can facilitate that. And B, how do you want to move forward? What sort of support do you want? Is it, just a shared Google Drive folder where you all can put in renter contracts or, whatever other resource you might want to share with each other? We are happy to support this group and others kind of continuing to learn from one another, because the last thing we want is for folks to be recreating the wheel and not know who to turn to when the answers exist. So please take a few minutes and go through that exit survey. And then a couple specific things. So we mentioned earlier, the kitchen door is one way that you can all, if you're a kitchen operator, you can let folks know about your kitchen by sharing it there. And then when the switchboard project really starts doing the data collection phase this summer, they will go to sites like Kitchen Door and other places and mine those for information. So we won't be asking you to enter it twice. And I think that's all I really have to say. Is there any other burning questions that folks want? We have kind of 2 to 3 more minutes if anyone has a burning question or a point they wanted to make today.
Harriet, Bill Soretta. I posted this in the chat, but the shared kitchen toolkit, the 2025 edition that came out a couple months ago, is well worth the $99 to get it. You name it, it's in there. Everything from design to forms to rules and regs. It's a project done by Food Corridor folks, and they poll and have asked and taken material from a few hundred of their members, of which we're a member, and have consolidated that information. So if you want to understand how shared kitchens can work, not how a kitchen can work, but if you take the cumulative impact of hundreds of them, this document is updated and current and can provide a lot of guidance in one spot that's quite good.
That's so great. Thanks, Bill. I know that was really helpful for MCHPP as well. And it also offers a platform through which renters can sign up for their slots in a shared kitchen space as well. There was a question from the breakout sessions about that, and it can make that process fairly straightforward. Okay, anything else folks wanted to share briefly, and then I'll hand it back to the Convergence Projects folks. All right, Annie?
Okay, thanks, Harriet. And Christine, you're like a marathon moderator. That was amazing. And thanks for everybody's attention. I know one or two of you, this is almost hour 4 of being on Convergence calls today. So congratulations. Okay, Lauren, you can pop up the closing slides here. We're just gonna take you all out for a second. So yeah, thank you again so much. We hope to see you again, if not a virtual call, then the in-person one. Um, if you have a moment, there's a very quick survey. We would love feedback on how we can keep meeting more and more needs as we go on throughout the days and the years. We have some upcoming virtual workshops in the next few days. This is week 2 and the last week of our virtual workshops. Whoops, here we go. So the next one's tomorrow. We have a local food counts virtual session, which might be interesting for all you, commercial kitchen connected to producers or our producer folks. And then the next day, Wednesday, we have a teach-in on food is life, the right to food in Maine, where I don't know if you all know, but we were the very first state to have a constitutional amendment on the right to food. And not many people know about it and what it is. So come learn. It's very interesting. So those are the 2 coming up here. And then there's another one on Thursday. You can check out our site for that. If you're interested in the in-person or can spread the word, we would love to gather a handful more folks to come. Like I said before, should be quite financially accessible to everybody, so they can reach out or fill out our request form for stipends. Links are all in the chat. And then coming back here to the collective action mural, I certainly heard some actions that could come out of today's session. Please check that out so that other folks can know and hear what you might be thinking about doing, and they may want to connect to it. And then if you're interested in learning anything more about Maine Food Convergence Project work groups or projects like the switchboard or the food processing infrastructure work group, which seems very tied to everybody here, there is now an interest form in the chat. It's very quick. Just state what you're interested in, and we will get in touch with you and let you know more about it. And then last but not least, on June 14th at 4 o'clock, we're going to have a post-event gathering. And this is where we reflect on all the things we heard and saw and learned and chatted about during the virtual and in-person convergence. And we say, all right, what do we need to do? Where are there gaps? Who should be doing it? What's the charge? So if you're interested, please come to that on June 14th. And that is all we've got, people. Thanks for hanging in there for a couple of hours. Hope you learned something, made some connections. That's what we're all about. And hope to see you again. Have a great evening, everybody. Bye.